What's up, Hunter? How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing great. Today we are going to be talking about this movie, A Real Pain, starring Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin. But I felt that since it's Black History Month, we should talk about some of the Black events that have been happening lately, Hunter. So I was wondering, what Black things have you been noticing in the cultural zeitgeist?
Oh, okay. Sure, why not? Yeah, this relates a lot to the movie. Yeah, Black History Month. There was the Super Bowl. Kendrick Lamar did the halftime show at the Super Bowl.
Okay, so
Um,
like, no, let's talk about this first real quick. Because like while I view us as a pop culture podcast, we're all about the movies. How did you feel when Samuel L. Jackson showed up as Uncle Sam?
oh, that was great. I'm a big Kendrick fan, so I'm very familiar with To Pimp a Butterfly and how that starts out with Wesley's theory, and he's talking about Uncle Sam and the next track as well. And so, yeah, it Kendrick's had kind of a visual representation of like Uncle Sam in his, well, not visual if it's music, but his it's a motif in his music that he's come back to before. And so to see Samuel L. Jackson play that, I'm like, well, that's clever. He is, you know, he's pop culture's black uncle basically. And his name is Sam, so why not? And yeah, that was great. That was clever.
You called Samuel L. Jackson America's Black Uncle. What?
Am I wrong?
Not really. Not really, because I was thinking about all of my uncles.
It's not Denzel. Denzel's like America's like black stepdad who you're afraid to cross or he will smack you.
Okay, who's Morgan Freeman?
Grandfather.
Sidney Poitier.
I'm too white to really know him that well.
Sidney Poitier is like the first black actor to ever exist, bro. He was
Yeah,
in what's the name of that movie? Guess Who Came Home to Dinner?
guess who's coming to dinner?
He
Yeah,
slapped
like
a white man on film.
I know of him. I haven't seen his like classic movies really.
Okay, Jamie Foxx.
Oh God, I don't know. We don't need to spend too long on this, but yeah, Jamie Foxx is.
No, no, because you want to categorize black people now. I have a list. How about Will Smith? Who is
Oh
Will
God,
Smith to America?
right now, um, that's a good question. I don't know if anyone knows the answer to that. What do you think? Don't just grill me on black
I
celebrities.
don't know. Will Smith is kind of light skinned, and he be doing like light skinned stuff, and nobody calls him out for it. So I mean, like,
He's a wife guy.
or a gay guy. I'm starting to question now. I don't want to take back my hatred for Jada Pinkett Smith, but like I've seen videos of Will Smith getting massages and just saying weird stuff. So I'm pretty sure that they're both just little Hollywood freaks, you know. So I think Will Smith is that freaky uncle, that's closeted but still has kids.
Yeah, that makes sense. I see that.
Yeah, I want to spend the rest of the podcast just listing black people and seeing how they relate to you as a white person, but let's get back to Samuel L. Jackson. I thought he was awesome. Or SZA hitting them poses. And okay, I was gonna just stick this and move on, but yes, I love SZA now. I don't care that she has a BBL.
Now,
I've heard one of her, huh?
now you only love her now. Like this is a recent discovery for you, or
I've known who SZA was, and I thought her music was chill, but the way they talked about her on Twitter just made me not really care, you know? Not that there's
mm-hmm.
a problem with that, but she's like one of those girls that can never keep a man, and her music is all about being single and lonely, which is fine. There was a time I liked that, but I mean, like, I wasn't fucking with it at that time I was on Twitter, so I didn't really care about her. But then when I saw her performance in the Super Bowl, and she was hitting all them poses and emoting, and God, she did this stripper move where she just like fucking just goddamn just hit the ground. I was like, I need to check out her music.
She was like doing yoga. She was doing some weird like yoga
She was
stretch.
doing some yoga stretches and like performing to the crowd in like this artsy chic way that I really liked. Kind of, and then also Serena Williams crip walking. But long story short, because I don't want to spend too much time focusing on this, one thing that I really liked about the Super Bowl I felt like Kendrick Lamar's performance was very intellectual. It relied on subliminals. It was very smart. I thought it was a very intellectual way to view black
Mhm,
culture. When I saw the
mhm.
Super Bowl, I was like, that's the kind of black that I want people to know I am.
Subtle. As subtle, I think, would be
Exactly.
it, because, that was one thing that it kind of not bummed me out, but I was like, "Oh, okay, I mean, that was a good halftime show," but it wasn't really what I was hoping for because I wanted to hear Kendrick play his hits. I wanted like what everyone I guess thought would be a Kendrick Lamar halftime show, but he didn't play like any of the classics really. He played like two off Damn, and then even that worked into the theme where Samuel Jackson had to like prod him to get those, where he was like, "Oh, what are you
Yeah.
doing?" Or whatever the skit is, where he's like, give them what they want or something. So he does like Humble and DNA off Damn, and then he goes right, and then like everything else. Oh, and the Black Panther song, but then like everything else was off GNX, which in a way is a flex because he's like, hey, I'm going to perform the Super Bowl halftime show, and I'm going to do exclusively or like 90% songs off my latest album that only came out like 3 months ago. So it's a flex, and I respect that and I appreciate it. But if I'm just like super honest with myself, it wasn't really like what I was hoping to get. But the subtlety, you're correct in like it was intellectual in the way where it was almost like maybe almost too subtle because he could have flexed harder than he did. But there are still things I'm picking up on. So for like for instance, just like 2 days ago, I heard someone mentioned that it said like game over in the crowd and the whole like video game motif and the corners of the stage being the shapes from like a PlayStation controller. I got all that on first viewing, but what I didn't connect was the fact that his like beef with Drake started with a song called First Person Shooter. And so he's taking this first person shooter thing and now he's having the lights say game over in the stands. I'm like, that's brilliant. That was awesome.
I think that we could talk about the subliminals for this entire episode. I have to match your story with my own story, and then we'll move on. I was watching it with a Kendrick stan. This bro, like, this is what I hate about Kendrick fans. At one point, he pauses it and he goes, "Did you notice that? Did you notice that?" Rewinds 10 seconds, like, pay attention. Pay attention to what Kendrick is doing. What is he wearing? I'm like, I don't know what he's wearing. He's like, look at his necklace. Okay, it's an A. And then he's like, "Is it lowercase or what do you call it?" And I was like, "I don't know, bro. What is it?" And he's like, "A minor. There's levels of this. There's levels of this." And I was like, "You could have just told me, bro. Like I wasn't gonna pick it up. I'm telling you. I'm telling you, I was not gonna catch it. I'm glad he had an A minor on his necklace, But that's what I'm saying. I'm glad everybody got shit from it.
Yeah, it is like part of his PG Lang company's logo, but it definitely also works as the A minor thing, and I wouldn't put it past him to have thought of that. Yeah, that's awesome.
So that was a Super Bowl, and I think it's great that Kendrick was able to show his intellectualism as a black man with subtlety.
Hmm.
But I think we're forgetting that black people have a right to be loud and aggressive
Yeah,
with their intellect as well.
yeah.
Hang on, it just reminded me of something. As I was watching A Real Pain, I couldn't help but remember when I was at Morehouse the other day, when I went down to my local corner to congregate with the Black Israelites on the first of Black History Month.
Oh, okay. You mean like those guys? Okay.
No, no, I mean, like, no, they're cool guys. No, like, no, really, they stand outside and they tell you about our history as a people, you know?
Mm,
And as I went there, I learned something interesting, Hunter. I don't know if you knew this, but
oh
stop
god.
laughing. It ain't funny. Like, really, I'm putting you on game.
I Hey, it's Black History Month, so I'm gonna let you go on this. Let's see.
I learned that I am descended from the tribe of Judah and that I carry Semitic blood. And while I have no issue with the Europeans and the tragedy that they faced in the Holocaust,
But
I need you to respect this
right,
because I'm not denying anything about the Europeans.
yeah.
But what I'm saying, the Semitic people who came from Africa, I think that if you track their migration patterns and how they experienced atrocities under King Leopold and the white supremacists of America, I think we should talk about And I think this would be a great
To
moment
play you out the intro
to
song.
explore our history as the true.
If you can read one full page of a Harry Potter book, nigga, I'll give 750,000 to whatever charitable organization you want to. That's like poetry. They rhyme.
So now that we've talked about the Semitic peoples and their true origins, I wanted to talk about this movie, A Real Pain. Hunter,
Mm,
do
mm.
you want to start off with any logistics about this? Like, you tend to know
Sure.
all the nerdy shit about how movies are made or who directed it or whatever.
So I picked this because we are, besides being in Black History Month, we are in award season, and this is an awards contender this year. I believe it's nominated for Best Original Screenplay for that Oscar, as well as Best Supporting Actor for Kieran Culkin. So I was going to watch it with or without you, basically, but I figured as I was watching it, I was like, you know what, this would be a good one for the podcast because I think for those who don't know us, if you want to understand Wally and I's relationship, I think it's I think this movie's a kind of can be a good embodiment of that, but I am definitely the Jesse Eisenberg character in this situation, and you're the Kieran Culkin. Exhibit A nearly getting us canceled with Black Israelite takes, and Kieran Culkin in this movie just has no filter, and he's well meaning, and he's very social, and gregarious, and he loves approaching people and just striking up conversations and saying whatever's on his mind, and like he doesn't mean to offend them, but he may sometimes catch a Facebook ban or something, and that's you.
Yes. I've said some things on Facebook I regret that I've been banned for multiple times. You know, that might explain why I kind of low key hate Kieran Culkin's character a lot because I guess I see myself in him a lot and I didn't realize that. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was watching it.
Because I will actually say what's funny is that I hated the end of the movie, but I actually do stuff like that. There have legitimately been times where I've like taken the Greyhound bus and I've like stayed at the bus terminal like a lot longer than I should have just to talk to people. So I've
Hmm.
definitely done that shit before. It's all, there was one time that I met this guy who just got out of prison and like I sold him my clothes and then like I
What?
wanted to go get cigarettes, and he walked with me through downtown because he thought I was gonna get jumped. He was, like, looking out for me, so I definitely do get because, like, people are interesting. I love people and understanding how their mind works and how they think the way they think, and I don't mind looking like a jackass trying to understand somebody, you know?
Well, I mean, as I was watching it, like, I think most people will watch it and see parts of themselves in all the characters. That is what engaging with art is. And there are probably definitely some people I could watch this with who would think that I am the Kieran Culkin to their Jesse Eisenberg.
But, like, do you think that Kieran Culkin and Jesse Eisenberg are 2 different faces of neuroticism, or do you think that they're diametric opposites?
I think that they thought they would be more similar than they were. I've actually heard them talk about this in interviews, and they thought that they would be like in lockstep and have perfectly similar working habits and habits towards preparation and line memorization and rehearsal and all that, but they've talked extensively about how Jesse Eisenberg is an over preparer, or at least he had to be for this because he was also writing and directing it, and he wants to rehearse and overthink everything, and then Kieran would just show up the like morning of and be like, yeah, what scene are we even doing here? Give me the lines. I'll read it once and remember it, instantly. And I think they each found that kind of frustrating about the other, and I don't think it like created any animosity between them, but I don't know. Sometimes they've said things in the interviews that it makes it seem like maybe it wasn't the easiest shoot for them because they didn't quite get along as much as they thought they might. That they are two different sides of neuroticism.
2 different kinds of Jews?
Sure, yeah. If you even consider them Jews.
I don't. Hey, don't, don't do that. You really, you really did almost,
Maybe I've hung out with some black Israelites outside Morehouse too. You never know.
Hunter. Listen, I don't even know how we got here, but yes. Um,
A real pain. How do you interpret the title? We can start with that. The movie's called Real Pain. It's about an annoying guy and it's about the Holocaust.
well, Jesse Eisenberg is clearly taking his cousin on this international trip because spoilers, there are going to be spoilers in this, by the way, because he tried to kill himself. So it's a real pain dealing with this guy who tried to kill himself, and he's taking him to Europe. And this is why I relate, okay? Because it's like, here's the thing about Kieran Culkin and people like me. I know how to behave. Please don't let how I act surprise you. I know how I'm supposed to act. I just choose not to. I understand that I am charismatic enough to crash out and act completely out of pocket and that people will still fuck with me because the way that I melt down is funny. So Kieran Culkin definitely knew not to like say anything when that African dude was talking about getting out of Rwanda from the Rwanda Tutsi genocide. You know, his little uh outburst there when and then he plays it back by saying, "Oh no, I'm just so interested in people and you're my hero, dude, and this, that, and the other." I have done that so many times, Hunter. Somebody will say something fucked up that's happened to them, and I'll have an auditory reaction because I think it's funny or interesting, and then they'll notice it and then I have to play it back like I care about them as an individual less than I'm entertained by what they're saying, because I don't for a second believe that Kieran Culkin was interested in the African guy in the airport scene when he was talking about his background and the trauma he had dealt with. I think he was interested in his story. He's engaging with the story, not the person. So I think it's a real pain to be this guy's cousin and to know how he views people and to have to act as this mitigating force to make sure that he doesn't get punched in the face anytime he opens his mouth. So Kieran Culkin is the real pain.
hmm And the pain that Kieran Culkin is um, feeling internally, like being super close to his grandmother and then his grandmother dying and just whatever kind of unmedicated condition he's got going
Grandmothers
on.
die all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
Grandmothers die all the time.
yeah.
Like, let's be for real. Your grandma lasting past 13 is a blessing. If your grandma dies after you graduated from high school, you get to be depressed and sad and upset. You do not get to kill yourself and be acting the fuck out of pocket.
No, yeah, he's for sure unmedicated. We don't know what he's got, but he's got something.
He's definitely got borderline personality disorder.
Think so? Could be, yeah.
I have borderline personality. Listen, let me tell you guys something. Pause. I'm not like these little bitches online that be saying they have mental illnesses and all this other bullshit. I've been in multiple mental hospitals. I've had multiple crash outs. I'm not a sane person. I have borderline personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder is a personality disorder where you have issues forming attachments with other people because you either heavily idealize and romanticize them or you heavily demonize them, and you don't have a stable sense of self. You don't really know who you are, so you're always in a reactive state where you have to make yourself the center of attention. You have to make yourself the center of attention because you cannot understand your sense of self unless people are actively perceiving you, if that makes sense. I'll give you an example. Kieran Culkin does not know how to feel when he's at the ghetto thing, the statues, and everybody takes a pictures. He does not know how to feel or how to reconcile what is happening. So what does he do? He makes himself the center of attention by
Mm,
doing this insane picture thing. You know what I'm saying? On the
mhm,
train, when he has that breakdown, he does not understand how he feels. So, what does he do? He makes himself the center of attention. This is something borderline people do all the time. They'll make themselves the center of attention so that they can be observed, so that they can fully understand their place in that moment and to gauge whether their emotional reaction to what they're feeling is valid.
mhm. And on the other end of that spectrum, so there's that big dinner scene where Jesse Eisenberg says, "My pain is unexceptional, so I don't feel the need to burden everyone with it." I've seen a lot of people. So like,
Oh, is this one of those things people are going to put on Instagram reels and say so relatable?
Yes, literally.
Oh
I
God.
was gonna say Letterboxd. I've seen a lot of people on Letterboxd commenting on that line. One of the top reviews on Letterboxd for this movie is somebody saying, "My pain is unexceptional, so I don't feel the need to burden everyone with it. Is the realest shit I've heard all year." And like to me, I just thought like, no, I've grown up with everyone in my family that I've grown up with feels that way. Like whether they say it that way or not, like, you know, my grandparents would not want us to know when they were going to the hospital for a surgery. They would try to keep that as quiet as possible and make everything just seem normal, easygoing. They never wanted to be a burden on anyone. And even the grandmother character in the movie, they talk about how she never wanted to be a burden on anyone. So it's not like that's some big like sublime revelation. I'm not quite sure why people are, awed by that statement. And I'm not sure if that's like quite the thesis statement of the movie that some are making it out to be.
I agree. This is where I'm gonna okay. That was a great segue point because you're talking about existentialism. Nobody likes to complain. Every human being feels that way. The beauty of writing is that you can rewrite that fundamental feeling of I don't want to talk to people about my problems in various ways, and then it can just hit every time.
Mhm.
Lines like that are in Linklater films and everything all over the place. Initially, when Hunter and I discussed this movie, watching it, I said it would feel like a Richard Linklater film, who is well known for
You said white people walking and
the Before
talking.
series. Yeah, white people. No, white people walking and talking is Sorkin. Linklater is white people walking and talking, but wanting to fuck, and it being romantic. In Sorkin projects, they're too busy to fuck.
That's
Um,
right.
but when we're talking about Jesse Eisenberg and Sorkin, Hunter and I actually saw The Social Network in high school. I wouldn't say we were big Jesse Eisenberg fans, but as high schoolers, I think the general consensus was that Jesse Eisenberg is Michael Cera if Michael Cera, could act. Not saying Michael Cera can't act, but he clearly plays to roles that are comedic. So the existential loneliness that he had as a character were framed as comedic versus Jesse Eisenberg. The existential loneliness that he brings to his characters are framed differently because it's drama, right?
Hmm.
So of course Zombieland, all that other bullshit, but I specifically remember seeing The Social Network, and that is a Sorkin film where there is a lot of walking and talking, and I felt like they dealt with existential loneliness in the same way. So I guess my question is like when you compare earlier movies that Jesse Eisenberg has done, like The Social Network and stuff like that, and then you look at A Real Pain now, what do you think Jesse Eisenberg has taken from The Social Network and his earlier career and brought to this film as a writer director?
That's a good question. I didn't really think of Sorkin watching this. I thought much more of Woody Allen because it's like a travel movie. And Woody Allen had that whole string in like the 2000s and early 2010s where every movie it was kind of like Adam Sandler and all his friends. It's like every movie they're going to Hawaii, they're going to uh Italy, they're going to France, they're going, and so like with this being in Poland, this was a very Woody Allen-ish type of movie. Jesse Eisenberg just has a very Woody Allen-ish persona. He's even starred in two Woody Allen movies before. So, it's well known that he is like the millennial Woody Allen, and as he's tackling this writing, directing um space in his career, he will just hopefully kind of live more and more up to that aspiration. So there is a conscious, I know I'm not answering the question about Sorkin, but there are conscious influences and he's really biting those influences. I just kind of, I don't mind that, or I don't see that as a negative to this movie because we don't get a lot of that kind of movie these days anymore. And to me, anything like Woody Allenish is just like cinematic comfort food. So yeah, it was a nice vibe where you get to see smart white people
Uh,
be funny and sad and think about existentialism.
I don't know why I got upset when you said smart white people, but I did.
Oh, for real? Okay.
Did you hear that?
Yes.
Did
Yeah,
you
yeah,
hear that
yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
loud
You
snort I
started you
did when you
started to
said smart
interrupt.
white?
Yeah. Go on.
I don't even know what I was gonna interrupt you with.
No, because I'm not wrong. Hey,
I don't
hey,
even.
is there any other kind?
Um, that feels like a racist question to ask me. That feels like a really racist question to ask me. Honestly, I don't know why, but I feel attacked.
So, okay, do you have anything to add to that? Or I have another
I wanted to make a joke. I was gonna say I disagreed with you because I felt that Woody Allen's movies always are like, oh man, I want this girl so bad, blah 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 blah. But he did. I remember seeing Blue Jasmine and really loving it. And I'm mentioning the Jewish thing, like to be for real now. Like, it's no secret that there are a lot of people who are like Jewish comedy writers, and they tell a very specific story about what it's like living in their environment. And I do agree that he very much imitates Woody Allen there. Because one thing I really like about Jewish culture or like Jewish writer, Jewish comedy writing, when you're looking at Seinfeld's or Larry David's and all that other stuff, is that the Jewish experience seems to be a very lived in experience with a very specific cultural dynamic that's parallel to mainstream white culture, but different enough to where it can be a little bit funnier, wittier, and incisive. And I think it's because the Jewish people dealt with the Holocaust, right? So dealing with genetic trauma like that gives you this kind of fortitude and this energy. And I think that both Jesse Eisenberg and Woody Allen approach their writing with this same sense of shared genetic trauma from something fucking terrible that happened during World War II. Because like genetic trauma is real, guys. Look it up. You feel that shit in your bones, and then it shows up in your writing, and it shows up in the culture of your writing and how you tell your story. So I do agree with the Woody Allen thing there. But yeah.
mhm. The next like major kind of comparison I had for it was I forget where I heard this from, but I heard someone say before that so many Pixar movies, like the secret formula to Pixar success is that so many of their movies are just quote road trip with your inner child. And when I really like thought about that, I was like, that's so true. And in some cases, it's super literal. Like Up is, crotchety old man traveling with a young kid and a golden retriever and rediscovering like his love for life, after his wife has died. But then in some cases, they smudge that template just a little bit, and you have like Finding Nemo, where it's not inner child, but it's Marlin and Dory, and Dory's just kind of ditzy, the stand-in for the inner child. And so, like, this is kind of that. But yeah, what do you think about that, like road trip with your inner child idea?
Um, I don't know how much I would say road trip with an inner child because I personally did not relate to the story in any capacity. I didn't find it relatable in any way. So I don't know if I was in touch with my inner child. But when it comes to like the road trip aesthetic and getting to know yourself, it is nice to have two different perspectives on one thing and then see these two different perspectives in like friction with each other. So I definitely do think that it explores how someone can live with themselves when they're learning more about themselves.
Right.
Because the entire movie is built around this crucible that Jesse Eisenberg is taking his cousin on this trip because he tried to kill himself 6 months ago. So clearly he's trying to get him in touch with the person he was before his grandmother died, but I don't know if that's child. I would say teenager. I don't know. But I definitely do think that it is a journey where you're reconciling with the younger version of yourself. But these people feel so lived in and they feel so real that I think their childhood selves aren't really what they're dealing with when it comes to unpacking the trauma of their grandmother's death and the Holocaust. So
Yeah. Um, I don't know how I feel totally about Kieran Culkin's character, because in some scenes he felt really fleshed out and real, like you're saying, and then in other scenes I was getting kind of like a magical, mystical Kieran Culkin vibe, or like a manic pixie dream Kieran Culkin vibe. Did you feel that at all?
I mean, that's all that Kieran Culkin really does, in his roles. Because I was gonna talk about Succession and stuff,
Yeah.
but, like, that's all he really does. He definitely did have a manic pixie dream girl thing because, like, you yourself told me that I remind you of the Kieran Culkin character, whatever, and I've definitely been in those situations. So when I look at his behavior, all I see is somebody being immature and selfish. because yes, I am the type of person that can do whatever Kieran Culkin is doing, but I mean, like, that's exhausting and it's also incredibly dangerous to do because you're liable to get slapped in the face by anybody for pulling that shit. So looking at his behavior, I'm just like, bro, somebody needs to punch you in the face. Like, really, not like at the end of the
Yeah.
movie. Like, you need your ass beat. Like,
Yeah, I think that's what I'm getting at. It's like in plenty of scenes he seemed, super real, and then in plenty of other scenes he kind of seemed like, well, now they just need him to sow chaos, so he's going to be a little bit beyond the pale in terms of like, you know, what he would actually say or do in this
actually, you
situation.
know what? I have a rant now. You got me started. This is why I was talking. I'm sorry to intro, but this is why I was talking to you about they should have a black Israelite in this movie or the diversity thing or whatever. Look, Kieran Culkin's response to the African dude's statement about the genocide, the Holocaust that happened with the Tutsi and the Rwandans, an African nigga would not just let Kieran Culkin do that shit to him. He would have got his ass beat, or the African would have walked away. I'm not trying to speak for all black people here, but I mean, like, he wouldn't be fucking with that because he just wouldn't be. So they're like sanitizing people's reactions to Kieran
Yeah,
Culkin. I do agree that his charisma takes him far, but I mean, like, you can't just go say that to an African dude. Like, I mean, come on. Like, that's a very recent thing that happened.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, like, what's something bad that happened to an entire group of people? If I met an immigrant person who was like being deported, I wouldn't say, "Oh man, that sucks. My ancestors used to be slaves and the crack epidemic happened in the 80s, so I totally relate to what is happening to you right now." No, the fuck I would not. You know why? Because as bad as black issues are and what is happening to us, being deported in that very moment feels a lot worse. The Tutsi, the genocide that happened to Rwanda between the Tutsi and the whomever else, that happened in this guy's lifetime. Like, he experienced it. So for a Jew to be telling him, "Oh man, blah, 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 blah," no, the fact that your grandmother was in the Holocaust does not give you the right to relate to this person on something that they experienced when they were actually alive. So it's that kind of arrogance that
Yeah.
Kieran Culkin has that I think the movie tries to convince us that it would be found acceptable by the people he's around. And that's why I keep telling you, where are the black people in this? A black person in that situation would be very offended by, and anybody really, but like, as a black guy, I can't imagine a white dude being like, "Oh wow, dude, that's hardcore, but I'm a fan of your trauma. Continue." Bro, I don't know how I would handle that. I'd come up out of my seat going crazy. Like, there's no way. And Africans are so much more hardcore than black people. Like, I mean, like, like they're so like, I'm talking about Nigerians now, actually. But like the way that, the witticisms and the jokes and the scathing comments that Nigerians and other African people can make, Africans are too fucking witty to like deal with that kind of dog whistling comment without putting him in his place, is what I am saying. And you can say the same thing about Asians. Like, if you said some shit to a Chinese person, they crash out on you.
Oh yeah.
My point is that
Oh
not
yeah.
everybody plays the shit that Americans do. So I mean, like, stop acting like this behavior would be acceptable in other areas. Kieran Culkin's consistent meltdowns and crash outs are about him taking the situation and making it exclusively about him and not caring about the other people around him. And I find that obnoxious and insufferable. It's just not fun to watch for me.
Yeah, I agree. I will say, another thing I learned from watching the interviews about this movie is apparently that Rwandan character is largely like he's basically just copy paste from an actual guy that Jesse Eisenberg knows in real life because he met him at something. I don't know, maybe a play he did or something. But he's talked about him. He even gave this guy like the same, or he gave the character the same name as this guy, and he talked about how this guy in real life was like giving script notes on how on how this version of himself in the movie would like react and behave, and his wife was like picking out wardrobe choices for that guy, so it's like,
He found the most Zen African ever. Because again, it's not even about like being black. It's an American thing. Americans vastly underestimate how their behavior is going to be interpreted by different cultures. I will say this because when I was a kid, I moved to Bermuda. Bro, they fucking hated me because of my attitude. Like, they just did. I got mocked and bullied so much. And looking back, I deserved that shit because Americans are fucking obnoxious. So I mean, like, I'm not even trying to make it a black white thing. I can, but it's not even a black white thing. It's just You can't take American rudeness and then transplant it into another place and then act like this behavior is going to be seen as charismatic and charming by everybody else. I just have a huge issue with white people thinking that their faux clever charisma bullshit is going to work in another country. Like it doesn't. You're just an asshole.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Stop making me watch white movies and then expecting me to review them, without losing my fucking mind.
Right. So, okay. So I think the last thing I have in my notes here, I feel like it's like maybe the deepest thought I've had about the movie, and it's a question. So think about that scene where they're on the train and Kieran Culkin crashes out because he's like, we're in first class and this isn't fair. And think about everyone who came before us. We should move to the back of the bus, like, so let's think about that. And then let's like think about the train as a metaphor for life. Okay.
Oh my god, now you're reminding me why I hate this movie even more. I love that you I'm sorry. Go on. That was
So society, life, humanity, whatever you want to call it, this always has to keep moving forward. And if you're somebody who's just like wallowing in your own pain and misery and self-obsession, you're slowing the train down. People will be empathetic towards you to a point, but at the end of the day, everyone is most concerned with their own pain. This is why at the end of the movie, no one really learns anything. They end up at the same spot they started from. All they really gained from the trip is like a momentary excursion into someone else's life and getting to kind of empathize with someone else for a moment, but then they go back to their own personal lives. So, if you're a Kieran Culkin type character, and I'm not saying you, but like in general, I think a question this movie is asking me at least is if someone is this kind of person who really struggles to contain their own pain or it like leaks into society at large, what is that person's obligation to take a back seat and like to remove themselves from the society that keeps progressing? And like when I say to remove themselves, it's Kieran Culkin has tried in the past, or the character has tried in the past to kill himself, and so I'm kind of paralleling that with like taking a back seat on the train. And I don't think the movie has an answer there, but it's like
I have an
obviously
answer.
you do.
Yeah. Two parts. I'm gonna do the first answer. I'm gonna talk about the train because it's really interesting because I hated that scene.
Yeah.
Go to therapy. If you feel like Kieran Culkin is, go to therapy. If you feel that therapy is not working, go to another therapist. Go to all the therapists in the world. If you do not meet a therapist that helps you find your problems, kill yourself. You are the problem. It is that simple. So I will explain why. I went to therapy. I've met with 3 or 4 therapists in my life. The first three therapists were terrible. They made me want to kill myself. They made me feel like I was a problem. I met up with my last therapist. Perfect. We meet like once a month. Now I barely have to meet him, and I just take notes when I feel upset. Go to therapy if you feel that way, because there are ways to solve your problems. And I think that movies do this thing where they have these characters exist in this liminal state. That liminal state is not sustainable because if you exist in that depressive state, you're either going to lose everybody you know and become a different person or fucking blow your brains out. I'm sorry, that's the truth. So that's what Kieran Culkin needs, therapy.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp.
But like, what do you think of that though? Like, what do you? Because I want to say something else about we're gonna wrap up soon, but this is too fun. I want to say my thing about the train, but I want to want to know what you thought about what I said.
No, I agree. I mean, speaking as someone who's never been to therapy but probably should have, um, I think everyone can benefit from it. There should be no stigma around it. And I've known you long enough to know times when you've probably been frustrated with the therapist that you're like rightly seeing, and you just people will have those moments of like, this isn't working, this is bullshit. Like, why do I even need to do this? Or like I get it, but in general, I'm never going to advocate for somebody to like kill themselves. But I'm also completely empathetic to everyone else in the train car when Kieran Culkin's having his crash out, and I love how the guy at the end of that scene, when like as Kieran Culkin's walking away, I'm paraphrasing, but there's that older dude who's like, you probably aren't going to find much misery back there either,
Hmm.
aka everyone on this train is yuppie and privileged, and like that was great.
I don't know if there's much more to be said about this. the train scene specifically, because you actually kind of encapsulated like everything that I was thinking. But I think before we wrap up, I have this bit that I wanted to talk to you about before you rate the movie. What if a black Israelite went on that tour? Actually seeing the whole movie, I would like to know who's crazier, a black Israelite or Kieran Culkin, because they both have this way of taking Jewish history and putting their own spin on it, where they hyper personalize it in a way to where they focus on how it makes them feel in the grand narrative versus the cultural effects that the Holocaust had on them as a people.
Mm,
I say that because on the train, when he goes on that whole rant, my whole thing was like, your grandmother gave you money to go on this trip in the first place. You know what I'm saying? Like, just go on the trip. Like, why are you making this about you? I think it's clear that Kieran Culkin's sole issue is he can't get over his grandmother's death and he's too lazy to really commit to therapy. And as a result, he takes his Jewish identity and he turns it into this personalized experience that serves as an outlet for his own personal misery and not the genetic trauma that these people faced when they went through the Holocaust.
yeah.
So I think, yeah, I think fuck that guy. I really don't like him. And I really don't like myself. I've been in his situation before. I don't like how acting like that makes me feel. So I try to be different. So when I watch these movies about these mentally ill people crashing out, all I can think of is do the work, man. Because in real life, Jesse Eisenberg would not be fucking with you taking you overseas. So at the end of the day, I see this movie as an exploration of dealing with trauma and how it can warp you into like this selfish, unmanageable person, and how everybody around you is forced to reconcile with that. And I'll close with this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the movie ended with Jesse Eisenberg inviting Kieran Culkin to his family's home for dinner. Kieran Culkin says no
Yeah.
and chooses instead to stay in the airport and be the exact same person that he always has been. So at the end of the movie, he does not change. He stays the same. He rejects a close relationship with his cousin but decides to stew in his misery. And what I loved about the end of the movie is how it ended with him turning and smiling at someone before saying something to them. I thought that was great.
It's
And
even
yeah,
it's even the same camera movement as the opening shot of him at the airport. It's like the first shot mirrors the final shot. Same camera, like tracking motion past the same rows at that gate, the same rows of chairs at that gate in the airport, and then it turns around and it's on Kieran Culkin. I believe that's the first shot and the final shot. It's the same camera movement, and it was even to the point where like I noticed it while watching the movie because honestly, when I know that I'm going to be talking about a movie with you, I watch it and have like an extra eye open towards like how many black people are in this movie? Are there black extras in this airport?
I really thought you were going to say something nice.
No, that is nice. That is nice.
Okay, I have a quiz for you then. Hang on. I have a quiz for you then
Well,
because I had it written
let me
down.
finish.
Okay, finish.
So basically, so I noticed in the first shot, I'm like, oh, there's a black couple in this airport, and then the final shot, I'm like, oh, there's some black people in this airport, and I thought, are these the same extras? And so I had to go
Oh
back.
my
I
God.
rewound it after I finished the movie, and I was like, were those the exact same extras? Did they just film this like opening shot and closing shot on the same day? And they aren't. They're different people sitting in different seats. But
You just can't tell black
otherwise,
people apart.
hey,
You
I thought
literally
they
cannot
might
tell
be.
black people apart, and you're telling on yourself. You're telling on yourself, and I'll tell you why. Because I tried to stop you. You were like, "Are these the same black people? How? Why? What movie has ever done that? Like, are you be for real? So you saw these black people, and you couldn't tell them apart. So you went and you researched to see, and the only reason you could tell that they were different is because they were sitting in different seats.
They're extras. You aren't meant to notice them. There's the heavy shadows on their faces from the big, like, floor to ceiling windows in the airport. It's fine. It's fine. But I was just going, man, how lazy were they? Like, I know it's an indie movie, but damn, like, is this really just the same setup on the same day? And it probably was shot on the same day, honestly, because it's the same camera tracking movement. But they got in different extras and they had everyone change clothes and stuff. So, like, no, they aren't the same, exact shot,
You're the
but
only
it's
person
close enough.
who would
No.
think that would try to who would think that who would watch a movie and like think, are they using the same black people as extras? You are the only person that would ever conceive of that thought. And what's funny is that when I interrupted you earlier, I was gonna ask you about the only black woman with a speaking role in the movie, or who was shown speaking, and I was wondering if you remember.
No.
Alright, so, like, there's this I wrote this down on my notes, and he's talking to this black lady in check-in for whatever, and then he goes up to Jesse Eisenberg, and he's like, "Her dad does security for the Knicks." And then I wrote down, "Black woman, is it racist she worked for the Knicks?" And then I scratched it out and I wrote, "Jews love the Knicks." And then I was like, "I guess it's not racist." I really was like, "It's really racist that her dad works, for the NBA." But then I was like, "Oh, wait, Jews love the Knicks. Oh no, this is just their cultural thing. Oh, they
That's
just view us
great.
as the help." He probably walked past her dad when he was going to a basketball game. Shit. Um, Now,
Okay,
I want to rate the
one more
movie.
thing.
Huh? Go
Well, I
on.
was gonna say one more thing. I know this episode's long, and we keep saying we're gonna end it, but I would be remiss not to mention the actual concentration camp scene. Did you have any thoughts about that? How they handled it,
My
or any?
thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, if you have
For
any.
me, I don't understand why you would go there. I don't know what that's gonna do for you going to the Holocaust. Like, they teach you about the Holocaust from, like, kindergarten. Like, what is going there going to do? Nothing. I don't get it. Am I supposed to walk around and, like, feel bad and resolve never to do that again in humanity? No. I've To this day, I've never, like, gone to a slave plantation and been like, "Let me just sit here and absorb the energy of my ancestors and try to understand where we went wrong." I could, like, no, it doesn't make any fucking
Yeah.
sense to me.
Um.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
I just don't get what their issue is with all this bull. It doesn't make any sense.
I get it.
I would never go. Listen, I would never go on a tour through the deep south where they're like, you need to learn about your history and how they would rape black women and how they would do experiments on black women with no medication, and that's how gynecology as a science was existed. I would never listen to a lecture talking about how they would buck break and rape black men so that they could destabilize gender relationships between black men and black women, which exists to this very day. I would never go into a field. I would never go to a place where black people were lynched and then sit there and bask in the ambience of the pain and suffering that happened, because I am not performative and I know what happened to me and I don't need to be there for that. So again, no, I don't get it. I thought they did the best they could with that scene. I do find it funny that Kieran Culkin did not crash out.
Mhm.
But yeah, I did not care. Because like when I was watching this movie, I was like, this is my issue. Because I'm like, as a black person who's dealt with, similar situation, honestly, much worse when it comes to genetic trauma, I could never dream of getting the money to go to Africa and tour around Africa. Nor would I ever have the money or the interest of going down in the antebellum South and seeing where the bad shit happened. I could read it in a fucking book, So I
Yeah,
don't.
they're speaking to the movie is that kind of like trauma tourism is speaking to a very elite, privileged class of society for people who can afford to take these trips. I will refrain now from mentioning how I've been to Hiroshima and visited the A bomb building there and the museum for the
But I
damage.
mean, like, the atomic bomb is like, you drop this thing that can eviscerate everything within you from like hundreds of
We're
miles,
so getting canceled.
and everybody dies instantly. From a historical and scientific, it's like visiting Chernobyl. If you could, you would go to Chernobyl to see, oh wow, this is what in a nuclear apocalypse happens. But the Holocaust is literally horrific acts of violence where you're baking people in ovens, you're experimenting on them. That's demonic
Yeah.
energy. Like, that just feels like there are a bunch of ghosts there that fucking hate you, bro. At least with the nuclear holocaust, everything is so incinerated that there's nothing there. Why do they have the buildings still there? Why don't they tear them down? Why? What are you guys doing here? We don't get to do that as blacks. We just get to kind of just chill and like no shit happened to us. I can't go to the South and go to a sunset town and go visit where my ancestors were lynched. You know why, Hunter? Because I'd still get lynched if I went there. Jews can go to the Holocaust and not be scared. I'm not going anywhere near where my ancestors were being fucking killed because them crackers are still there and they'll fucking lynch you. They just killed a FedEx delivery driver who disappeared somewhere in Mississippi. He was found strung up by a tree and he was a FedEx driver. Why'd you make me watch this movie? Anyway, let's rate this movie on a scale of 1 to 10. I'll go first. I think the movie was a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
I think it was a
Mhm.
6 out of 10 because to me, it's like Joseph Gordon-Levitt's movie Don John. Really great actor. They finally want to write
Porn
and
movie?
direct their own movie. Huh?
I said the porn movie. Okay, go on.
Yeah. They finally want to write and direct their own movie that exposes their shadow self and their anxieties about life and existentialism. And then it's perfectly shot and made because they've been working with famous directors all their life, so they can just copy and paste. And then it's perfectly written because they're great actors and they've been acting their entire life and watching writers, so they know how to write. But at the end of the day, it clearly feels like an exercise of showing this is me trying to go into the film world. Please watch this movie about something that happened to me at one point in my life that I still can't get over and I want to win an Oscar for. That type of shit. So it's a
Mm.
6 out of 10 because structurally it's well shot, well acted, and entertaining to watch. But at the end of the day, uh, it's very performative. And I talked about how much I hated Kieran Culkin's character and my own issues with it from a cultural perspective. So I don't need to say more. What I will say is that the movie had a lot of charming moments. Like I liked when Jesse Eisenberg was showing Kieran Culkin a video of his son, and Kieran Culkin went and rewinded the video to watch a specific part.
Mhm.
That was a tiny human moment that I've done with people. They have a lot of tiny human moments that people actually do that made the world feel lived in. But at the end of the day, nobody wants to deal with Kieran Culkin.
Mhm.
Fuck that obnoxious little prick. And I love him, but his character does not work for me as a person in the real world.
Yeah, we love him more in Succession.
Yeah. And Scott Pilgrim. That shit was lit.
I still haven't seen that. I'm feeling probably like a 7 out of 10. Just because I am such a Woody Allen fan and it does kind of feel like Woody Allen cosplay. Um, yeah, like the inspiration's there. It's very competently made. It's cinematic comfort food. I appreciate that we don't get many films like this these days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we fuck with you, Jesse Eisenberg and Karen Culkin. You will never know our names. We fuck with you. I'm not saying that
and Emma
I
Stone
don't think it's
who produced it.
bullshit. I think it's real art.
Yeah,
Who produced it? Emma Stone? Yeah, she's okay. I like her, I guess.
cool.
Is she Jewish too?
I
So that's what's
I
happening. They're all funding this Holocaust movie. Here's my question before we close. Why is it so popular to make movies about deeply unlikable people? And why do they make these movies expecting audiences to like the movie just because they can relate to the awfulness of the characters?
I think most people don't know a Kieran Culkin in their real life. So I think, you have the like you're going to the zoo quality where you're watching somebody that mercurial through the safety of the screen, and that way if he crashes out, it's not going to actually affect you, but you get to sit there and point and stare and be like, "Wow, watch Kieran Culkin be crazy."
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Well, overall, I don't know. It's an okay movie. Um, I hope I didn't offend any Jewish people because this is not going to be cut. All of this will be in here. So I really hope I don't sound like a terrible person. And I guess it's because I feel attacked because I've definitely been Kieran Culkin a lot in my life. So it is what it is. But what I will say is that if Jesse Eisenberg wants to write and direct another movie, I'd love to see how he evolves and where he takes it. So any closing thoughts before we put an end to this uh
Podcast.
podcast?
I'll be curious to see if he wins the Best Original Screenplay Oscar and if Kieran Culkin wins Best Supporting Actor. But other than that, no, I guess y'all tune in next time where we will be reviewing God knows what and talking about God knows what other pop culture event.
All right. Well, this has been It's Like Poetry, It Rhymes.
Peace.